May 25th, 2022 edition of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm, East Coast Executives. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League Young Professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as webinars, Facebook Live, and Instagram Live. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. Today's Digital Career Success Series, Managing Mental Health, features two dynamic and esteemed mental health practitioners, Bailey Jeremy and Jewel Edward Love. Welcome to the show. Listen,
glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Really excited to have you. I think this is a necessary conversation. So when I reached out to both of you, it was intentional because I see that the two of you are doing amazing things in the space of mental health and mental wellness. So with that being said, ladies first, Jules, so don't be mad at me, but I'm going to go to Bailey right now. Bailey, if you can introduce the Digital Career Success Series audience to yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bailey Jeremy. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in Harlem, New York. I serve Manhattan and the Bronx currently. And I also am an entrepreneur of an organization called Black Wellness Initiative, where we sell wellness subscription boxes. And I'm a podcaster. My podcast is called Mind Over Melanin, where we speak about social justice, intersectionality, and how it affects people of color or the BIPOC community. And we talk about any and everything. So I encourage you to check those sources out. And my biggest passion is addressing generational trauma throughout our community. So that's me, and I'm excited to be here.
All right, Bailey, I got to keep you here for a second before I forget. A wellness subscription box. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I should not say just subscriptions. You can buy one-off boxes, but I created both the podcast and the wellness subscription box out of my passion to address generational trauma. I felt like I needed to expand my reach. And what better way to expand my reach than putting the techniques and tools that I learned about through my education in a box or in a podcast, something that you have access to beyond an individual or family session with me. And so the boxes that we have basically allow people to engage in mental health on their own, whether it is through meditation, self-care, various things, reading, journaling, all of those things are included in many of the boxes. And we have boxes for children, adolescents, men, couples, all types of things. So we have all of those things.
Amazing. I love it. And hopefully we'll get that information in the chat so our audience can take a look. Speaking of the chat, listen, drop in name, LinkedIn, where you're from. We'll take it all. We just want to know who's with us today. But I do know one person that's with us today, and that is my friend Joel. Joel, how's it going, man?
It's going fantastic. You know, my two things you're going to notice. Number one, my bio is really short. I just want you all to get a real experience of me here and now. And the second thing is my hair is short. So you may have caught on to that. But new day, new style. I'm ready to rock and roll. My name is Jewel Edward Love Jr. I'm the founder of Black Executive Men. We help Black men in corporate America find inner peace. We've been around since 2015, founded in the historic city of Oakland, California. Since then, we've grown from one sole licensed psychotherapist and professional coach to now we have a 15-man staff that ranges, all over the United States. We've been able to work with Google and NVIDIA and Medtronic and PayPal and Capital One and a lot of other organizations, and just doing the work. It's good for, we can talk about it. It's good for business, okay? but it's good on the meaning category. My tank is full on the purpose and the give back category, and so I think Bailey could probably attest to this. Um, Having both of those needs met through our career and profession is just it's incredible to be able to do so. We're gonna get down to business today. I hope y'all are strapped in, got your notepad ready. We got some information that could ideally and hopefully change the rest of your life. So ready to go.
Man, listen, I want to commend you on the work you're doing. You're doing really impactful and powerful work. So one of the reasons I knew I had to have you on the Digital Career Success Series with the National Urban League. Let's just jump into the next slides. We're going to get it going. As Jules said, we got work to do. I know Bailey's locked in with us. Look, we have a lot of things that we're going to discuss today, but it's always important for me to share with our audience. Please do not hesitate to drop questions in the Q&A. We will have a Q&A section, a session at the end. So please drop your questions in the Q&A. But I think here's a good place to get started. I know when I was speaking with Bailey earlier, we thought a great place, Jewel, to get started was, what are the benefits of good mental health? So Bailey, I want to come to you with that.
So the first thing that I would say good mental health can lead to is stellar decision making. When our mental health is compromised, your esteem could be compromised, your achieving goals can be compromised, the insecurities of blaming self can be compromised, which leads to compromised decision making. And so when we are at our best selves, we make sound decisions. And making sound decisions is really important because those decisions follow us from one place to the next, whether it's a relationship or it's a job or an experience with someone. I'd see our lives as basically a series of consequences from every decision you make. So that is why I think that is one of the biggest reasons why good mental health is so important.
I love it. Decision making. Jewel, you want to chime in here?
Absolutely. So peaceful and empowered. Those two things, those two qualities, those two experiences are what comes to mind. Feeling a sense of inner peace and a sense of empowerment, like what Bailey was talking about your next steps and your abilities to achieve your goals, your hope and confidence, forming strong relationships or getting into a relationship, as we talk about in therapy and coaching world, of your dreams, things like that, are just something that's healthy for you. And also when we're talking about mental health, there's a big range. There's people struggling with severe mental illnesses, schizophrenia, major depression disorder. And it's good for us to use these terms as well and to become familiarized with actually using the terminology used in the field and community of mental health. And so folks on this kind of end of the spectrum are going to be struggling just really severely, like going to work, things of this nature, forming healthy relationships. Even that might be off the table. So that's kind of at a very severe end. Then there's going to be moderate concerns. Then there's going to be mild concerns as well. So for folks that are really, really, really struggling and that are going to therapy and on medication, just being able to manage those symptoms is probably a really good sign of good mental health. And then on the further end of the really healthy, it's thriving in life. So people don't necessarily have to go to therapy because something is just so drastically wrong. They can also go because they want more to go right. So I just want to share. I know folks already know, but just the really big range when we're talking about mental health, there's quite a few categories and experiences going on there. But peace and empowerment, I think, are really two good goals and felt outcomes of having a good therapeutic experience and achieving good mental health.
You're leading me somewhere here, and I'm going to kind of jump. I guess it's not a pivot, but is that really important at the beginning to kind of know what you want the outcome to be when you get into a relationship with kind of addressing your mental health needs?
Um, Yes and no. Here's the thing, and this is a therapist smile, is oftentimes people come in thinking they know, like this is exactly
Mhm.
what's wrong, or this is exactly where I want to go. Um, and yet, and that could be very much it. I want to work on my job, my relationship, improve my relationship, make more money, kind of move up the, seniority ladder, possibly change from being an employee to an entrepreneur. It's very specifically that. And yes, you can find a therapist and have an experience where it really just is that. But oftentimes, and what we're skilled in is really finding out, we might say, well, why isn't the relationship working? And you say, oh, you know what? I had another relationship and there was like infidelity or like cheating involved. Oh, okay. And classic question, how did that make you feel? Devastated. It was hard for me to trust after that. I was really angry, but I felt sad for a while. So now we're processing that. And then we may find out there was, I don't know, infidelity in the family or childhood challenges that kind of even led to that moment. And it can unpack all of these elements that may on the surface seem disconnected, but once the conversation gets going like a puzzle piece, when you put all those puzzle pieces on the table and you can see where they fit together, it creates a bigger picture. And so in the therapy process, you may come in for one thing and we find other areas that are connected to it that we kind of have to, or it will be helpful to address in order to truly make a difference in your current relationship, in your confidence on the job now. So I think it's kind of a both end. Yes, come in with your goals, and then also be open to the journey in possibly a deeper transformation occurring.
Wow,
Mhm.
makes complete sense to me. So Bailey, let's talk about this being open to the journey, right? Jewel just used that term, but in the Black community, sometimes just overcoming the mental health stigma can just being aware of it and how it kind of has evolved in our community has prevented some people from seeking out help. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I think during a conversation offline, I was expressing that choosing to become a mental health therapist that wanted to address generational trauma and primarily the BIPOC community, um, I felt like it was a risk. I definitely did. I was like, this is a gamble because I want to uplift my people, and I know that my people struggle to acknowledge, some of my people struggle to acknowledge what we're going through, or even want to come to the table and address it. And so I will definitely say over time, especially during the pandemic, we've started to embrace the journey of mental health, because it was very unavoidable, whether it was suffering from burnout or isolation. Those were things that, regardless of race, age, gender, we all were struggling with to some extent. And so, of course, I'm not happy about the pandemic, but I am happy that we're closer to embracing liberation and healing as a people. And I think one thing that is key to engaging in mental health in the Black community is comfortability and awareness. Sometimes, you see these dramatizations of diagnosis on TV or you hear about them, and your experience with, let's say, depression, for example, could look like something completely different than sobbing and being alone. And maybe it is sobbing and being alone, but maybe it's you struggling with concentrating or being irritable or upset or angry. And these type of things can affect your overall functioning in life. And those are the things that, therapy and addressing your mental health can really tackle. And so I think like normalizing exactly what some of those symptoms are when we're talking about mental health is really important, or even normalizing the idea of talking out things, because I think in our community there's been a big a big magnet or attachment to strength. But the strength that we're attaching to is a strength that doesn't necessarily always have very positive connotations. It's a strength of suppression or ignoring traumas, and like just getting over it instead of going through it, and actually trying to overcome some of the things that happen when you experience traumas. And so I think embracing that achieving mental health or managing your mental health is a journey, is something that's really important for us to do in the Black community.
I definitely appreciate that. I want to take a dive here, Jewel. You know, just in looking at your work and kind of admiring the work you do, and just as a Black man, I know you're working with Black men, right? So, and then you're also working with individuals, Black men that are in corporate America and maybe pursuing or currently have leadership roles, and how that impacts their mental health and mental wellness. During this pandemic, for the past 2 years, what are you seeing? Has it allowed people to take a deep breath and maybe just reevaluate what's important, or has it kind of compounded the stress and the things that lead to instability with mental wellness?
Yeah, great question. I think the stresses and the pressures are always there, actually, because Black men in corporate America are few and far between, uh, in often in their organization. When we look at us all together, there's a lot of us. There's quite a few of us, but individually at your company, at the Google, at your Microsoft, at your Clorox, at your, over at Instagram or Meta, it's like one of the only. And this thing around onlyism is one of the key issues that a lot of our customers are experiencing. So, the top three concerns, actually, and then to circle back to pandemic kind of related matters, are social isolation, loneliness. So, those two. And oftentimes, the loneliness can be on the job and trying to connect with colleagues that may or may not understand their experience or saying sensitive things, microaggressions, things of that nature. But also in their personal life and being able to open up with their friend circle or their partner or their spouse about what's really going on inside for them. And as it was just shared, kind of repressing and stuffing down, or never receiving the education on emotional literacy. Sometimes in session, I'll ask guys, so how you feeling about the situation that's going on? And they'll give me a thought or behavior. They'll say, you know what? So how'd you feel about what they said? Well, I couldn't believe it. Okay, that's a thought. How'd you feel about what they said? I just walked out. That's an action. Got it. Feelings, anger, joy, irritation, frustration. And I give them a resource from the Center for Nonviolent Communication. You could Google this. It's a feelings inventory. It's 2 pages, and it's 2 pages full of feelings. And I say, can you Google this? And they pull it up. And I say, can you tell me, just 5 feelings, 10 feelings off of this sheet? How did you feel about, what they said? And they start, irritated, frustrated, aggravated, curious, concerned, confused, worried. And to be able to name your emotions is one of the quickest ways to get to the core of who you are. I'll say it again. To be able to name your emotions, and many times that's connected to vulnerability, especially as men and Black men, to be vulnerable. It's one of the quickest ways to get to the core of who you are, which is really important when we talk about authenticity. We talk about your real power, interpersonal communication, things of this matter. So, and then the last thing, and then I want to tie it back, is fear. Fear is actually at the core of what the majority of my customers are experiencing. Fear of dealing with the police, fear out in society, fear of their colleagues looking at them as being less qualified for a certain role, them getting fired, demoted, things of this nature. There's a lot of fear that they're moving around with. So those are some of the things that we work on now. So social isolation, loneliness, and actually fear. During this, last, 2 years, Black Lives Matters, George Floyd being murdered, the constant violence that we see just every day, be it in our communities and just on, in the media, um, coronavirus, I'd say there's been positives and negatives. Some of the negatives I think we kind of know about, experienced them ourselves. Just the intense pressure that comes from hearing all these things in our workplaces, not being a place where we can feel understood to talk about them. So it's not only that these instances are happening, but then we go to work and we can't even talk about it, or people pretend like these instances aren't even there. Um, that's kind of on the negative, but on the positive, like you were saying, Kenneth, is taking a breath and pivoting toward a new job, a new company, starting one's own business. There's been I'd say a kind of mini explosion in brothers starting their own business, moving into real estate, moving into the digital marketing space, becoming coaches themselves, um, just kind of hitting the reset button and asking themselves, with this, life that I have, what would feel best for me, and then starting to take action on it. So for some people it's been horrible. For some people it's been, a time of growth and self-discovery. So a lot of those things have been taking place. And I know, Kenneth, we got a lot to get to at some point. I also want to check in with the chat just on their experiences, because many times I think even in these kind of conversations, there's an assumption that black folks are not going to therapy. But what I've been finding out through my conversations is a lot of us have been to therapy. A lot of us do know what psychiatrists do, psychologists do. So it would be interesting hearing, like, who's been to therapy before? What, have you had any beneficial outcomes? What have they been from the audience as well? But we can maybe get to that later.
No, I appreciate that. It may be too late for a polling question, but we can just put it out in general to the chat. Listen, it's the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. We are here today. Bailey, Jeremy, Harlem, Jewel, Love, Oakland, California. Listen, this will be available on the Urban League Jobs Network YouTube channel, probably in about a few days for you to view as well. So definitely lock in with us, make the chat active. The Q&A is available and here for you. We will get to your questions afterwards. Bailey, I want to come back to you just to speak about resources. Where are people finding good mental health resources? A lot of people have a shingle up and claim to be solvers of problems, but maybe they're not professionals and trained in the manner in which they need to be. So where do people find good resources? I know Joel just mentioned the inventory, the what was it, the fillings inventory, but even outside of things like that, like where do you go? Where do you suggest people go?
So there are a few sources when it comes to searching for mental health practitioners that I would definitely recommend, and I've used personally for myself, or I'm listed on them myself. As far as Black female therapists, I would say Black therapy, therapy for Black girls. Therapy for Black girls is an amazing resource that you can find. Their social media presence is very strong. Psychology Today, and the reason why I like Psychology Today is because most times people have to have their profile pictures there. And so, you get to pick and choose how your therapist looks. And I'm not saying like pretty, like attractive or not. I'm saying, just looking to see if it's someone that you feel like you can connect to just by seeing what their demographic is. And also, one that is very popular, especially now because of the pandemic, is social media. And I'm not saying social media wasn't popular prior to the pandemic, but because we all had to stay indoors, I think many people, including mental health practitioners, became very, um, very I guess, in tune to utilizing social media as a resource. And so, one thing that you can do if you don't find um, uh, your resources through therapy for Black girls or psychology today or therapy for Black men, as Jewel just shared in the chat, you could also utilize hashtags. Hashtags are so powerful. Like using a hashtag that says Black therapist NYC or a woman therapist NYC, feminine therapist NYC, Oakland therapist, like whatever it is, those hashtags are hashtags that I've definitely used. And I wouldn't be surprised that Jewel didn't use them as well. But just going to a hashtag to find someone's page could be a way of you interviewing them before you even sign up for a consultation with that mental health practitioner. And that's not something we always had access to, but now you get to know what people post about, what information they prioritize on their social media pages, or even utilizing LinkedIn. So I think those are really good resources to have. And of course, word of mouth. And if you are insured, going through your insurance company and seeing what providers are covered is also a really great resource if you're not paying straight through, like a cash resource. If you want to make sure that you're utilizing a copay, going to your insurance could be very helpful as well. I would just say that search may be a little bit more difficult because you don't get to see everything about the person. Typically when you're on the insurance company's page, you get to see contact information and the name and maybe the specialties that they have, and maybe that's enough for you. But if it's not, I would recommend doing that and also copying and pasting those names in Google and seeing what comes up and like studying as much as you possibly can to decide if that person is right for you.
Love it. Social media, word of mouth, insurance provider, and then kind of doing your own due diligence and Googling through on that. That's exceptional. Thank you for that information. Joel, how are you finding that people find you, but also where do you suggest people go for sound resources?
Sound resources, I'll start there. So, asking around your friend group, and that might be a vulnerable thing to do, just depending on how open you are with them. But that's one of the ways that people have contacted me. There's some guys who got, like a WhatsApp group or text group or something like that. And then my organization, blackexecutivemen.com, has been dropped in those conversations. So that's kind of how it goes. And I've had brothers come to me and ask, like, is there somebody I should meet with? And then I give them a referral. I can't meet with them. That would be called what we call a dual relationship. I already have a relationship with them. They're my friend. I can't be their kind of doctor or their person on their treatment team as well. So I refer them out. So asking friends could be a really good way to go about it as well. I think the other recommendations are pretty. They're there. You're definitely going to find them there. It's just about following through. And the follow through piece is actually really important. What I recommend, because finding a I just want to ask, and Kenneth, push back if need be. I'm open to it. I'm open to redirection. I just want to see in the chat box, if we can like really talk about mental health for a moment, if you're up for it. So this is voluntary. If you've been to therapy before, you don't have to put why, how long, when, with who, any of that. If you could just type in I have, and if you haven't, just put never been. I want to do just a quick little survey. I have or never been. So we got a lot of I haves coming through. That's the
I
I
see.
thought that's what was going to be the case. I thought that was going to be the case. But we
So
have Go
So,
ahead.
so real quick. So I'm seeing a lot of I haves as well. Do you believe that's indicative of the population or the audience that tuned in for this particular web event?
That could be folks that are already kind of pre-sold on, sold on therapy and mental health, and are like, hey, I want to further the conversation or continue to improve some things in my own life. Let me, log in for this experience and be a part of this particular community with the Urban League. So that could be the case. And yet I'm just finding more and more having these conversations. Yes, there's still a lot of taboo, and it's and things are changing. There's a Black mental health movement on happening right now. It's been happening for a little while, and I think we're starting to see some pretty good. We're starting to see some results in it. So I think that's some things that have come to mind. So thank you all for sharing the I have. We have someone, Lewis Jones. I haven't. Sharon, I have, and still. For me, yes. C. Diaz, good. Lewis Jones, never been. Got it. Got it. But there was another part of your question around, I think, how people find me. So I think in the Black community, what's been going on is that there's been a way of doing mental health and marketing mental health. And it really hasn't been for our community. And so there's been a lack of trust, many times for good reasons, of the larger, typically wider psychotherapeutic establishment. Even the APA came out with this lengthy report. It was like earlier this year or late last year about all the ways that the APA, American Psychological Association, has been collaborators with some different racist thoughts and practices. So this is a major like share of information that they've put out there, and they're trying to change their ways right now. So when I was building my own business, um, I wanted to make it something that Black men could feel proud and strong and strengthened being associated with. So the name of my business is not like Black men traumatized in their youth, broken down, crying.com. It's not attractive, okay? It's not going to work. It needs to be something that strengthens and supports the male ego and Black identity. And for my specific demographic, our aspirations, which is the C suite, typically, if you're working in the corporate America, or to become your own entrepreneur, your own boss. So the marketing around it, it's aspirational, it's strong, it's Black affirmed, identified, and the website, it talks specifically to Black men in corporate America. And it says, I know you. That's really what it says. And because therapy, it's such a vulnerable experience where you're sitting across from a stranger, although they're professionally trained, you're really opening up your life. And that can be a very scary thing to do. So just circling back around, having more Black owned businesses that are or just programs that are focused toward the Black community, that speak directly to us, our concerns, and the ways that we move in the world and see the world. I think it will be that bridge for more of us to say, that's for me, or that's me, or I belong there, or I feel comfortable here, where that hasn't been the case so much in the past. And that's part of the Black mental health movement, is catering it for our community. And so because I've done that, I'm prominent on LinkedIn and advertise directly to my audience there and do some social media marketing. And at this point, it's kind of word of mouth. But we got some other marketing plans to expand in the future. So watch out for us on Facebook.
Amazing. I think it's great. I think Joel, you and Bailey are, part ambassadors for that movement, right? And ambassadors for wellness and mental health. And I think that brings people, closer to feeling comfortable, seeking out help and support and assistance. So once people do that, Bailey, kind of what happens? Talk to us about what happens in a therapy session.
So it can really look different because I would say it depends on both the person coming to therapy and the therapist that you're working with. For me, I'm a solution focused therapist. And I also navigate through a lens of like trauma informed therapy. And so that may look completely different from someone who is an emotional focused therapist, or there are many other focuses. But when people come to me, of course, they're going to tell me why they're coming to me. We will, they'll fill out forms, and that'll be part of the initial consultation of me getting to know them. And then we'll start to assess what goals they have. Um, like, tell me what you want to accomplish in therapy. And as Jewel mentioned a little bit earlier, that's how the journey starts. And things just start to bloom as you're in therapy. And you start to learn of the threads and the connections from session to session that maybe you didn't necessarily have the awareness of when you first came to therapy. And we build and learn of that awareness, or you gain that awareness just through the therapist asking questions. I am really big on helping people come to their own realizations in therapy. And so, a lot of it is open-ended questions. How did that make you feel? Or what led you to make that decision, or whatever it is. And the person might say something and sit there in awe or surprise, like, oh my gosh, like that's why I did that. And of course, sometimes, if I think the decisions, or the whatever the problem or issue is in that moment is something that's connected to the past, I will gently guide us to investigate those things. But if it seems like something very surface, we'll just focus on achieving those goals in the moment. Um, and I have people who have been in therapy for 3 months, and people who have been in therapy for a few years. And of course, for me, I always want to move them forward so that they become independent or self-sufficient, and don't need as many sessions or don't need as much guidance. But also, as Jewel mentioned, it really depends on the individual and what they're dealing with. Because I do have clients who are even, on the autism spectrum, and those people, they can benefit from therapy for pretty much their entire life. And so and it looks completely different than someone who's experiencing depression, or someone who's experiencing something at work, and they just need to get through that isolated situation.
Jewel, Bailey spoke about guidance, and even people come into that aha moment, right? But as you've practiced across the board, right, men and women, what are mental health concerns to look out for? What should our audience be looking out for that may be a symptom of a bigger issue?
So negative thought loops, not being able to get out of them is a big one. So this is negative self talk. Well, my guess is we all talk to ourselves and have certain messaging that's going on. A situation happens in life, and then we interpret it in a certain way, and say, well, this is why that happened, or this is why that happened to me, or this is why this always happens to me, or I'm never able to get out of this situation, or it will always be this way. And that kind of negative self-talk, um, some of it just is what it is, right? We're human. Some things are positive, negative. I'm not here to say that that everything has to be all positive all the time. Absolutely not. But if things start to kind of become negative a lot of the time, that might be a good opportunity to take a step back, really analyze and say, wow, is this different for me? Did I used to be, a little bit different in how I was looking at life, and now it's just negative? If so, something has changed. Something has changed. Something has changed outside, and there's plenty changing outside. What's going on, negative in the world? Did something change inside? Was there a loss? Did you lose a parent? Did you have a difficult relationship breakup? Is there, are you, drinking a little bit more than you used to, or a lot more? Substance abuse, use. This could include marijuana. I'm not. By the way, I'm not against it. It's just about taking a look and seeing if these things are preventing you from achieving your goals in life. That's really a good measure, I think, when it comes to substance, alcohol, and drug use. So I think those are some good things to look for: is the negative thought loop in your mind, a generally negative outlook on life. Maybe you did not used to be that way and now you're this way. You've had a difficult scenario happen for you in life. A lot of people are these days, coronavirus and all the racialized violence that we're seeing on a regular basis. But those are kind of like some social things, a few mindset things. If we really want, and then on the more severe end, here, let's talk about it. Hearing voices. We think, oh, this doesn't happen to us. This happens to white people. Or no, I've worked in a acute, so high intensity clinic where people have severe mental illness. All races come through. All races come through with all these with many of these issues. So this could be hearing, but we're gonna really go there right now, folks. So yeah, hearing voices, seeing things that other people aren't seeing, um, suicidal thoughts. Okay, thinking about ending your life. And there's kind of three levels to that. There's thinking about it, suicide. There is making a plan to do it. The number one, there's actually quite a few people who've thought that. Not everybody has thought that, but there's enough people who have thought about that. They've reached a really hard place in life. There wasn't really serious. They weren't really seriously thinking about it, but they just wanted to get out of the situation, and so that came to mind. But what takes it serious is having a plan. When people start to have a plan to end their life, serious. That's a serious situation. Okay. I won't get into the details of what people think or the plans they make, but you all get that, plans. But the most serious is the intention. So they have the thoughts, they have a plan to do it, and their intent is to carry it through. There's some people who think about it, they have a plan, but they would never do it. The most dangerous ones are the ones that are intending to do it. So, folks, I just wanted to give you those three layers, but really any of them, time to see a therapist. It's time to get some help. And there's help available. So those are some things that come to mind. The serious end is um, changing in your eating patterns, your sleeping patterns, not bathing regularly because you're depressed, have lack of energy, uh, significant weight loss or weight gain. All these can be signs of actual depression. So, not just sadness or lack of energy, but clinical depression. And these things can often be addressed by talk therapy or medication. I'm not here to push medication on people. We can have that conversation though. It's a good one to have. So I could go on, but those are some key things to look out for.
No, I appreciate it. And I'm going to stay with you real quick before I go to Bailey. But
Yeah.
tell me about what you're seeing. You're working with Black men. You're working with individuals that are professionals from a working standpoint, corporate America. What are you seeing in line with imposter syndrome? First, maybe define imposter syndrome for our audience, and then kind of tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, so oftentimes it's the belief that one uh, isn't qualified or doesn't belong, and that they will get found out. That other people will find out that they don't belong there because they're not, kind of like fully capable on some level. But that doesn't just have to do necessarily with skill set as far as capability in doing the job. When we're talking about identity and race, it can also be things what they call culture fit, and that they'll find out that their colleague doesn't feel the same about social or political issues that they might feel, and so they're constantly having to kind of create this professional identity slash, wear a bit of a mask at times in order to fit in socially, in order to get the job done, the professional aspect done. So I think on the cultural racial level, that can come up for quite a few of our customers and Black executive men, is that if they showed up and showed who they really are and what they really thought, that they would not be accepted. And yeah, and you know what? It's true in some cases. It's true. They're not wrong. They wouldn't be accepted. That's an unfortunate reality. So I'm not here to talk folks out of the way that they feel. I usually affirm it. Um, and then sometimes there is wiggle space. There actually is room for them to share more of who they are and how they feel at work in ways that would be accepted. And that's where the conversation comes in between me and the customer. Um, and then there's on the skill set piece. Sometimes they feel that they might be viewed, whether they are qualified or in some cases they're still kind of learning and learning on the job, that they might be viewed as underqualified or not qualified enough for the role, and they'll be found out, and something negative will happen, i.e., they'll lose respect, credibility, or possibly lose their job. So in those situations, I ask them, like, are you qualified? And sometimes they'll say, well, I'm kind of learning this piece, and that's what will help them do is get that education so they feel rock solid confidence inside. And other times they're fully qualified or overqualified, and we just work on shifting their mindset to be more comfortable in themselves around others. So, um, just gonna put that out there. And then Kenneth, I know he shot me the message, folks. I'm gonna have to log off a little bit early, but you can definitely reach me on LinkedIn. But I am gonna hang around for a little bit more.
We appreciate you. Listen, Bailey, I think Jewel left us in a good place because I want to speak real quick before we jump into this Q&A. Give us a snapshot of what you're seeing that's changing for mental health at the workplace. Like, what positives are happening? How are companies getting better? How are people getting better? ERGs, BRGs, things of that nature that people can kind of use to strengthen the foundation for their mental health.
So one thing that I didn't mention in my introduction was I served as Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Learning and Development for an organization during the pandemic. And the organization was a nonprofit that provided resources for formerly incarcerated people, primarily Black men, because yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles, and systemic racism. So in the process of serving as director in that organization and also collaborating with other organizations, one of the biggest things that was very valuable were the ERGs, employee resource groups, affinity groups, and making sure that there was mental health resources at the organizations that staff could take advantage of. And just asking the question, if you are in the corporate world, more often than not, there is some mental health aspect to the insurance that is available. And there is some structure, more likely than not now, because of the Black Lives Matter movement that happened during the pandemic. People knew, and to be very transparent, my role became open because of Black Lives Matter. Many organizations were rushing to find a way to address potential racism, institutional racism in their organizations. And so they hired people that could focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the organizations. And a lot of those recommendations not only created employee resource groups and affinity groups, some of them created more succinct and comprehensive experiences of having grievance in organizations, because prior to Black Lives Matter, not saying that they all erased and went away, but prior to that, microaggressions probably could fly way easier than they did, especially the ones about race, than they could before. And just like the Me Too movement, microaggressions associated with sex and gender were probably way more acceptable prior to the Me Too movement. And so, with time, we're seeing people make these changes in their organizations to tackle and address mental health, and creating structure that allows employees to take advantage of going to a group or going to a session. And if your organization doesn't do it, I would, say not to hesitate and reach out to HR if there's an HR department, and if there's not, that's concerning. But if depending on the size of it, of course. But if reaching out to the HR department to ask them about the resources that are there, and sometimes taking matters in your own hands. I created a group of people in my organization where we would just meet together, because we were like-minded, and that was kind of therapeutic for us once a week, and so inventing things like that could also benefit you, whether you are working completely remote, you're hybrid, or you're in office. So those are some of the things that I would definitely recommend doing and investigating if those structures do not exist in your organization.
Sure. Before we go to the slides that provide people with information on how to stay connected with you, I want to address this question by Sharon that's in the Q&A. How do you maintain healthy mental health when you are dealing with microaggressions, when it's acceptable or appears to be acceptable in the workplace? Jewel, I'm going to let you chime in, then we'll go to Bailey, and then I'll go to the slides.
Okay. This is going to be last one for me, folks. But this is a great one to close out on because it's so common. Unfortunately, it is. So I'm gonna give you the real advice here, which is yes. So number one is having a therapist that you can talk to. Vent. Important. It's important. In therapy world, we call it process. To process what's going on, to be heard and validated. So there's one thing to have the experience of microaggressions aimed toward you, or just generally but you're in that environment. And then there's another to not be believed that you're having the experience you're having. And that's a whole nother level of hurt that can lead to a whole nother level of really anger and frustration, amongst other things. And that's something that friends can provide, family can provide at times. And yet a therapist has specific, tools to help affirm your experience. That alone can be healing and empowering. So that's the first thing. In addition, a therapist can help you come up with tools and even communication, interpersonal communication skill sets on how to impact your workplace for those incidences to happen less, ideally not at all, but certainly less. That could be assertiveness training, training on communication, healthy boundaries. There may be some things that, some kind of tools they can put in your tool belt to help shift and shape the culture at work for those things to happen less. So that's another empowering thing that can possibly happen. And when I say I'm going to tell you the real, it may be time to leave. It may be time to leave that company, organization, group, community, whatever it is, because it's too much stress, pressure, it's a hassle. And I get it. To change jobs, maybe you've been there for a while, or kind of maybe it was a dream job and it didn't quite pan out that way, can be very hard to even consider. And yet, in some cases, it's truly the best option to speak with your therapist or coach or on your own about what would be an environment that feels great for me, racially, psychologically, mentally, financially, for sure, professionally, and begin the process of identifying those organizations. And there's a whole process we could talk about on, kind of how to do that, but basically job hunting, job searching, interviewing, vetting them about their culture before you accept an offer to work there. and then accepting the offer at the company that feels like it's going to be the best fit overall. That can take a little time, but overall, that could yield the best mental health results. So just wanted to share that. Folks, I got to log off. This has been great.
We appreciate you. We got your contact info. We'll take it from here. Hey,
Okay.
listen, I love the way that closed out. Bailey spoke about creating things within your organization that allow you to have a safe space and allow you to be and connect with people that are like-minded or maybe going through some similar things. And Joel pretty much said, you know, sometimes it's not the place for you, and you have to step away. So with that being said, if you're looking for additional information, please feel free to reach out to Bailey Jeremy. This is her website. I know she's active on LinkedIn as well. I don't want to put that out there to the world, but I know it happens. And Joel Love, blackexecutivemen.com. I know Joel is active on LinkedIn as well, so you can find them there. Bailey, listen, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today. So on behalf of the National Urban League and the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, Wanda Jackson, Dory Brown, and the entire team over there, we just want to say thank you for doing an amazing job today. I'm Kenneth Johnson. You can connect through with me on all social media platforms, but LinkedIn's the thing that I do. Bailey, any closing words?
No, just thank you for having me here. I really enjoyed this, and I hope that every person here can take something away and own their wellness.
I love it. I really appreciate you. I'm looking forward to future conversations. Thanks again. We will be back again to do this. Wow, it's going to be Wednesday, June 8th. Can you believe it? Bailey, it's summertime. Harlem in the summer, great place to be, but we'll be back leading the way. It's sponsored by Nestle. It's navigating being a person of color in a leadership position. So please join us June 8th at 12 p.m. for another impactful Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. I'm Kenneth L. Johnson, your host. Bailey Jeremy is still with us, and we just want to thank you all for joining us and being such a great audience. Take care. Enjoy your week. We'll see you June 8th.